gotta go live.
It's going. What's up, profitable stylist? Here we go. We've got a fun week this week. We are talking everything extensions,
Not just extension,
toppers, wigs, hair
everything hair
extensions,
addition.
hair additions, add-on hair, wefts, strands, beads,
I'm trying to do the emojis.
string, yarn,
Oh
falls,
yeah,
clip-ins,
everything, right?
chignons.
So, so people want more hair, and that's what I've found in my marketing and advertising. I love the mistakes that happen in the industry. That the the happy mistakes, the discoveries, some people like to call
The
them.
Bob
I
Ross discoveries.
just learning from, and the older I get, the more I appreciate it, and the more discoveries I've had through the big mess ups in life. But then, of course, I've got to learn from other people's mess ups also. And in the hair replacement world, they've got, oh, I've had the unique opportunity of getting to see a lot of different situations in the hair world. Most hairdressers just cut, color, highlight hair. Hair extensions is kind of coming into the hairdresser world. So then you'll have these hairdressers that just do extensions, and then they'll just do tape ins, or they'll just sew in wefts, or they just do something, and that's all they can recommend because it's all they do. And then you've got these hair replacement studios for a long time. Things are changing. I just hit my computer again. You've got these hair replacement centers, because I did hair replacement. I'd go to these conferences and they'd have suits and ties because they're like business people. They're not real hairdressers. They may or may not bring a technician or two, but they're an owner who doesn't do hair, and they're coming to figure out how to make more money, how to put hair on bald or thin in men, who can they buy the cheapest hair from, who's got the best quality hair, and they only did top of the head gluing hair systems on and nothing else. They didn't do salon services. They didn't do extensions. And I've really loved these last few years watching some of these things merge. And so it makes me realize, because just how many different things there are to do that hairdressers don't even know they're licensed to do. And it's always been my favorite topic, is all the things a hairdresser could do with their license. In most states, they can do a freaking pedicure, although we don't want to, for the most part. I've done a few when I was starving, and I just did whatever somebody asked for when they came in. But when it comes to putting hair on people's heads, I am of the opinion that you might need to at least know how they all work so that you can say, this is what's best for you. I don't do that, but I can send you there. Don't just, this is kind of going into one of the topics we're going to talk about in the future. Know when to say no, but we won't rant about that right now. One of the biggest mistakes I saw was a marketing team one time accidentally advertised for extensions and got a whole bunch of hair replacement clients for a hair replacement studio. And so now they purposely will do that, advertise for hair extensions, because there was a time when extensions was way more acceptable. Like, oh yeah, extensions is a cool thing to get, but hair replacement, ooh no, that's something I have to hide or lie about, or not do it in a private room, not tell my friends that I'm really thin or bald, because many times they're shaving the head and you're going from not so good to worse before you
Mm.
get better. And so it's a struggle. So for me now, I advertise thicken your hair replacement and hair extensions and wigs. And when somebody comes in or calls or starts to message me, I'm interested. How do you guys put hair on? Or what do you do for hair? And I said, it depends on what you need and what you want. Let's start with a consultation. Send me a few pictures. What do you think you want or need? Because they've done a lot of research most of the time. And so at this point in my life, I'm happy to say we can put hair extensions on a man or a woman if they just want a little length or thickness or fullness or highlights or lowlights. We can sell them a wig. We can sell them a clip-on topper, a beaded on topper, not have to shave their head. We can take somebody with thin hair and just shave off those last few hairs and bond a hair system on that. When you do like that, it looks like it's growing right out of their head. It stays on for 3 or 4 weeks. They have service done. So because of my unique experience, both teaching and selling all these different services, I thought it'd be a fun topic to talk about all the different avenues of getting more hair on the head, and I still haven't named them all. I think that that's just a little teaser there in the few that we do and the few that anybody and everybody could learn how to do, so that you can have all these tricks in your tool bag to help a client out. What do you have to say about this topic?
It is very fascinating. It is very interesting. You got to look at it as this. A if I use the analogy of a doctor, you go to the general practitioner. They know a little bit of everything. They don't specialize in any specific type of medicine, but they do have a command and knowledge of all medicine. So what
That's a
they
good point.
right, and that's really what we need to do. We are doing a disservice if you are hyper focused on one thing, one technique, one brand. That's
Right.
okay, and you can make a career out of doing that one
You
very
can.
specific thing. What unfortunately what ends up happening is a lot of stylists will start to knock other techniques, or they'll say negative about other techniques,
That's
trying
true.
so desperately to protect the one thing that they do. And
That's a good point.
it's unfortunate. It's very, very unfortunate because it's there there is not a one thing fits all. There, that same hairdresser, that same hairstylist will be willing to learn 7 different haircut techniques. They'll be willing to learn 13 different color application techniques, right? They're very open minded about so many other things. But when it comes to the hair replacement or the hair extensions, whatever one system they went all in on, it's like how you say the expression you with your eggs in the basket in the
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
don't put all your eggs in the one basket. So when you go all in like that, it becomes very dangerous. And how, because what is now your ability to do a consultation? Are you willing to say, this is the type of hair extensions I do, or the type of the hair replacement I do? Unfortunately, madam or sir, it's not going to work for you. So I'm going to have to refer you on to somebody else. And is that stylist willing to make that partnership with somebody else? Because doctors, they do it all the time. They refer to other doctors or other offices or other hospitals, and everybody has, I don't know what the partnership is or how that works, the intricacies of it, but
Right.
it exists. It's a thing. It's a network. That's how they call it, right? Everybody, they've created a network of like-minded individuals that work together, and everybody wins. They all benefit. That's my take on it. No, look, I'm trying to be positive about it,
I didn't expect you to stop right there, so it was
No,
a
it's because look, here's the other thing. Unfortunately, there's a theme that I'm starting to notice online. And it's a lot of stylists blaming clients for mishaps. And they're saying, "Oh, look at the client ruined my job, my hair extensions job. Oh, look, the client ruined my hair replacement job. Oh, look, the client, the client, the client, the client." Now, if you go backwards 20 years ago, if a mistake happened, then it was the client going on social medias and saying, look, my hairdresser sucks. Look what they did to my hair. Or look, my hair fell out. Or look, this happened. So the blame was very heavily dependent on the ability of the hairdresser. Now it's kind of reversed itself. The ability of a successful service is heavily reliant and dependent on the client maintaining the service. And it's a two-way street. Your three-leg stool analogy is really a beautiful, beautiful analogy. I love it when you give that analogy in class, because it really is a harmony of all three things coming together. But it definitely falls upon the relationship of the stylist performing a decent service and explaining it to the client, and doing it in a way that the client is able to maintain it beautifully as well too, for everybody to enjoy it. I don't like the bashing that's happening. I don't like, it's too easy right now with the climate of society to go negative and just push the buck or push the blame onto something else, instead of coming together to say what happened. And no matter whose fault it is, who cares whose fault it is, just let us discover what happened. So then this way we can come up with a plan to move forward to prevent it from happening again, so everybody can enjoy, the stylist can enjoy doing, and the client can enjoy wearing the service.
one of my favorites. You said 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago there wasn't any social media, and so
It was
uh,
the beginning of social. We're a little older than we want to remember, Bernard. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so I've been a hairdresser for
Is it
close
so
to,
funny? 20 years ago is when the internet really became like started booming and becoming a thing
right. And when I was a young hairdresser, because I've been doing it 30 years, so I had a good decade of
of
no internet,
no social. Yeah.
no social media, and and what hairdressers would do, and I don't want to rant on this too long because I want to get back to hair add on hair, but hairdressers, if something didn't come out right, we should just add this to our Trello board of topics. Who to blame when the hair doesn't come out right? Because we would, as hairdressers, not me, I couldn't stand this, but they would blame so many things. It would be like, is it your time of the month? Are you pregnant? Did you, do you have well water? It's like, I got the same water I've always had. I mean, because all of a sudden my well water is the reason my hair didn't come out right. I've heard everything from, well, the barometric pressure has been different recently. Like, what? How do you even know about I don't even know that was a thing, barometric pressure. I don't even know what that does.
I had a stylist in my salon back then use that. I've literally heard
Yeah.
that
And
before.
so to me, it was the early days. I'm watching the older stylists blaming all these things for why the color didn't come out right or the bleach didn't work right. And I thought, I think this is just excuses for bad work, just own up to it, do it better, fix it. I mean, because I started doing color on roots, gray headed ladies, and sometimes it didn't take well because it was a new client. I didn't leave it on long enough. I didn't use the right volume. I don't know. It was a little resistant, but I would make a couple of adjustments if they gave me the opportunity to, and it would come out good and it'd be good. So I never had to use all the weird excuses that people would use. But I want to get back to head-on hair because it's a lot of fun for me because the first 6 or 7 years I was mostly just doing hair and artificial nails, and then I got into hair extensions and a little bit of hair replacement. But then from there, I started to realize, wow, there's so much more. I think, dude, I don't know if you mentioned it on the live just yet, or if it was before the live. You said something about yarn, and I'm like, oh, you're right.
I said
Even
it during the opening. Yeah.
not even yeah, not even human hair. That's right. Some people use strings and yarns and material and even more added in when a and so then that makes me think of taking it a step further. Something that looks like hair that's not actually hair would be synthetic hair.
Hmm.
So if you're doing long braids or dreads, you don't need expensive high quality hair if the hair is going to be braided and it's not going to flow like hair because the purpose of using human hair has a lot of different scenarios, but the main purpose is that it stays detangled well if it's a high quality hair. It's got the cuticle layer on it, so it looks real, it holds the color, and it doesn't tangle bad. Whereas if you use synthetic hair, the downfalls and I don't want to go deep into this either, is it's inevitably a plastic, so it can't take the heat quite as well, and it'll change shape, it'll frizz, it will either straighten or curl if the heat gets to it. And so synthetic hair doesn't handle high heat very well, so flat iron, curling iron. But if you're braiding or dreading, you shouldn't be using any heat. So then you can use a really inexpensive synthetic fiber. And so I like kind of knowing the whys some fibers work better than others depending on what you're doing. And somebody might buy an expensive hair to braid somebody's hair, and you just don't need to without. So that's where the experience comes in, the education comes in, learning from somebody that knows what they're doing in a particular category. I don't I don't do braids, and I've only learned it from working next to stylists that do. So that's where I learned it from, and that's where I was talking about learning, getting experience from other people, either doing or making mistakes. But when it comes to putting hair on the head in general, I like to subdivide it into two major categories before we decide what we're going to use. And
Hmm.
this is something I think a lot of hairdressers don't really know where this line is. And, there's so many gray areas in our industry. I wouldn't say there's an exact line, but it's somewhere around here. So, hair extensions, for the most part, is for the sides of the head and the back of the head, but the sides and down. Now, We can start sneaking hair extensions. Like if somebody's parts here, we can sneak extensions a little higher up on this side and we can hide them. But for the most part, somebody learns how to do hair extensions, then they look at, I mean, I know from the classes, I can remember teaching hair extensions, and the first thing a girl would say is, I can't wait to go home and put hair on my bald-headed grandma. And I'm like, what? How did this was actually said in a class, well, she's not completely bald, but she's close to it. And I said, when you say bald-headed, and so they want to put it right on top where it will be seen.
Yeah.
And I guess if you haven't done it yet, you just saw somebody do hair extensions and you see overall this person, wow, it looks better. Even the mannequin head, oh, wow, thicker hair, longer hair. I don't know how some people don't see the future just yet. And they just see, oh, more hair. My grandma needs more hair. I'm going home to do it. And so that's when I started realizing I had to subdivide it, because I did hair replacement also. So I said, okay, so you can't put hair extensions on top of the head. Oh no, why? And then I thought, well, you can. You shouldn't. We've seen extensions on the top of the head in some bad areas and very visible. Even on oh my goodness, I still love this. Rolling Stone has a cover photo with Paris Hilton, and she's turned to the side and her hair is blown in the wind, and you see her extensions on the side of her head. But a lot of celebrities are caught in pictures, but it just blew me away when the editors don't catch on the cover of a magazine seeing the extension attachments, And so that's even on the side of the head. So in my opinion, hair extensions should be hidden. The attachment method should be hidden well within the design of the hair. So hair extensions basically for the side of the head. Hair replacement is basically for the top of the head. Hair replacement, as you go bigger, doesn't look as good or as natural, or it's harder to make look good. So I'm not saying you can't cross the lines for both. That's why I call it a gray area. But for the most part, extensions for the sides, hair replacement for the top, and then there's all these different techniques. Before we go into any of those other topics or techniques, what you want to say anything about that?
It's inspirational. It really is inspirational that there are so many different options. A long time ago, there wasn't that many options. And the expansion of so many different techniques and so many different systems that are available now really gives us, there is no excuse why anybody, unless they're deciding to do so, there is no excuse why anybody should be walking around without add-on hair. And if you talk to anybody, I don't care, man or woman, you talk to anybody, every single person will say, I would love more hair. I would love more volume. I would love more fullness, more thickness, more length.
You want more hair, Eddie?
I want more hair. I do want more hair. It's why I use hair regrowth product. Right. I'm trying to fill back in my hairline. And I'm not at that point yet where, because I've talked to you about it. I've said I want to get like a little strip and just put a little strip right there. And you've told me like you're not there just yet,
But you can put it across the front. It's a lot of work. I say a lot of work. It's more work than you're doing now to maintain. And so you have to balance that too. How important is the change in the image?
Is the change in the image, But that's the whole thing. Like everybody wants it. I can tell you how many clients I have sit in my chair, and and this is the joke I make in class all the time, is I say, when they was passing out hair at the buffet, you got greedy. You went for like a third and a fourth helping. You didn't just go once, like a normal human being, And they're like, oh no, my hair has thinned out so much. My hair used to be so thick.
I have more hair than most people, but you can see between the hairs now.
I can't see anything between anything in your hair.
Yeah,
but to you feel, but that's the whole point. You feel.
It's not a feeling. I am not crazy. I took a bath this morning, and I got that white bathtub. I got out, the water's draining, and I saw at least 8 to 10 hairs my length on the tub.
This needs to be a clip. This needs to be one of those 1-minute shorts.
I would say about a year and a half ago, before that, you never saw one of my hairs in the tub or the shower. I'm 53 years old. I guess I hit that age where I'm starting to lose a little hair. I didn't lose hair my whole life. All of a sudden I am. I hope I'm healthy. I feel okay, but I think it's just part of getting older. I know I'm what most hairdressers call the crazy customer. That dude just came in for hair replacement, but he doesn't need it. He's got the ladies too. She has plenty of hair, but I see it now. And I just want to say I am sorry to all you ladies I called crazy behind your back through the years of doing hair, because you come in and you're like, I used to have more hair. And I'm thinking, you have a lot of hair, ma'am. You don't need it. And they're like, yes, but if you knew. And I'm thinking, who cares? Insensitive. Insensitive. Who cares? You look great. Well, now I feel it. People
now
tell
you
me
understand. That's why I'm laughing so hard, because now you are.
I'm experiencing it. You can't. There is nothing like time to teach you how wrong you were about so many things in the past. And I have judged so many people for the amount of hair that I thought looks fine on you. I'm thinking I'm doing a good thing. You look good. You don't need hair. And they want hair. They want hair extensions. And so that was kind of the go-to for me. It was easier to add hair extensions because men will come in and want this. I mean, they wouldn't have this much, but it was close to this. They would want it shaved off.
Yeah.
Like your hair. They would come in and say, shave this off, put more hair on my head. And I would feel guilty. But if they want it and they want to pay for it, I can't give them more hair. Their hair would grow back if they decide they don't like it later. But it's to a point where I don't feel guilty anymore. And I what is it? Empathize. I empathize with the client who says, I need more hair. I used to have more. If I look at them and think it's a lot, I don't use my judgment anymore to sell them what they want. I'll put the extensions on. So how many different ways can you put hair on a person's head?
13.
We don't have a list. 13? Let's list the 13 ways that you can put hair on. And if we go to more, we'll rename the number. But we named a bunch in the beginning. So I would say, do you subdivide? Because you've got hair extensions and hair replacement. But how many different hair extension techniques are there that you know of? Name a few.
Oh boy.
Keratin or K-tips.
All right, so there's keratin, keratin or K-tips.
Oh, is that the best? Is that why you're doing like that?
I go from the top down. I go from the top down. I am like that. So but now we're talking about strand by. Oh, so this is where it gets complicated because those are considered strand by strand.
Yep.
So keratin and K-tips, but
well,
then
we can name all the strands. Let's name all the
there's also plastic tips, which I personally think is disgusting, but whatever.
Looks like a keratin tip, but it can be plastic.
But it's plastic.
Polyester, I think, is the plastic tips.
You also have resin. There's glue-based bonds. There's resin-based bonds.
I've heard there is wax-based too. I don't know why or how that. And then
there's wax-based. It's like beeswax. They use some kind of beeswax.
Yep.
There's 4 right there, and then you've got eye-tipped, or excuse me, before we get into eye-tips, you've got beads.
Yeah.
And then you have the fairy tale thing, the little knotting. You know the what is that called? That technique?
No idea what you're talking about.
You literally make a little knot. You take the hair and make it into a knot.
So since you're saying that, the very early days, it was a lot of times it was synthetic. You'd use twice as long hair as you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You would take a little section on the client's head, split it, and lay that synthetic hair in there. Cross the client's hair, cross the synthetic hair. So
that one.
Yep. So Pro Hair, that was Pro Hair Labs, and there was a technique called monkey bars at one time. I didn't know how to do it, but it was similar to that, where it was a lot of gluing in at the scalp. So now you're mentioning that, I'm going to cross over for just a second because we're talking about individual hairs. I'm going to cross over into the hair replacement world. On top of the head, there's a company, I think it's IHI, that sells a technique, and it might be synthetic hairs, but where you tie on 2 or 3 individual human or synthetic, I'm not 100% sure, I think it's synthetic hairs, to one individual hair on a client's head. I forget what the name is, but You get in there and you do a little knotting technique, and you just do it 30, 40, 50 times, and you can make somebody's hair look a little thicker on the top of their head. And so that's a literally strand by strand
It's
technique.
literally strand by. So I mean, right there, we're up to 8, and we haven't even gone into anything else. We're just on strands.
And then if we wanted to go historical and we went back to the beginning, I would say wefts would be a generic term for the types of wefts. Oh, we didn't even name. Did we even say anything about our on-stage beaded strands?
And then you have beaded. Then you got the flat beaded. You've got eye tips. You've got the
We said eye tips, but you said
I
8.
said
I
eye
didn't know
tip.
if you were at 8 or 9. So
I mean, yeah. So I'm already at 13.
yeah, so a lot
I haven't
of
even
different
gone away
types
from
of
strands yet.
individual strands. And I mean, individual strands even started where you just cut a little chunk of hair off of a weft or anything you had laying around, and you used hot glue on the ends of those hairs and rolled it in on a client's head. So handmade individual strands was one of the techniques. So there was a lot going on in the individual strand world, and then to predetermine the size and pre-make them gave us I don't know, some I guess some organization and consistency in the look of strand by strand techniques. And then my mind works more historically. I like to kind of go to the beginning, and I would say wefts have been around for a very long time. They were
Yeah.
handmade first, machine made second, and then made in a lot of different ways. 1 row, 2 rows, with the little short hairs, without the little short hairs. Um, Wigs are for the most part made out of wefts.
What were the falls? Oh, falls, and I was never able
So
to say it. Chignangs,
I don't know how to say it either, but chignon, I think.
Chignon, yeah, something like that. And then you
So
had the bangs, those little triangle bang sections
so
and
yeah,
stuff.
so you're going into to pieces and parts. My mom would have called it wigs and wiglets, like all the
Wiglets. Yes, thank
wiglets,
you,
all the
thank you.
little things that I guess the let part of wigs was all the things that were not a full wig. It was all the little pieces and parts, whether it was a ponytail, the bangs, a little clip on, a little hair, any partial temporary worn, which also has been around forever because they were all made out of wefts also. And so you've got the wefts, the wigs, and that's kind of where hair pieces started to come in. But most of that was made out of synthetic in the early days. And then we got strands, wefts. Oh, so along the way, kind of in our lifetime of doing hair, is where tape-in extensions came out.
Hmm.
Now, what was your first experience with tape-in? Do you remember, like where or when and the size of them?
I was doing a fashion show in Chicago. The model had a mishap with a curling iron when we were preparing her, and then it got even worse. Like it was a snowball chaos. So the curling iron, the stylist burned off. I was in charge
So
of
what
the.
tape-ins did you fix her hair with? That,
We literally, Bernard, we literally took tape, like we tried it with Scotch tape, and we literally like taped the whole weft, a section of hair onto the side of her head, and then the
so you were
first.
a weft in because you didn't have the right adhesive or attachment method.
Yeah, like that was my very first time experiencing using tape in any capacity. My first experience in professional tape was a full, I think it was like a 16-inch full track.
Mine
It
too.
was a track.
So I was wondering if you experienced the very long tape in. Where did you get
Yeah.
it? Do you even know where it came from?
I don't remember. It was too
So for
long
me, it
ago. I
was
don't
it was
remember.
I often wonder who invented it, but it was On Right was the name of the company back then. It's Hair Visions now, and they had a kind where the hair was connected here, and then the tape part folded over, and
Yeah.
it had little slits in it to pull the hair through. And eventually, they just took that top part off and ended up sandwiching two together. And it was called Ultra Tress at the time. And when you say it was long, what it was is they sold it by I think they sold it by weight. And so the longer the hair was, the shorter the weft was because the weight was in the length of hair. And so when you got like 8 or 10 or 12-inch hair where it was a little shorter, that sucker would be, it
Yeah.
would be,
Yeah.
and it was all rolled up in a little box. And you
So
know
then
what?
maybe it was the same company.
It might have been. So we were putting it on people's heads, and I was shocked because we were doing hair systems, hair pieces were being taped on guys' heads, and then the tapes were getting better and better and sticking to the head and the hair better. So I think what happened in the industry is people were thinking, my goodness, this tape is holding a hairpiece on the head pretty good, and it's sticking to the hair better than we thought. We thought we were shaving heads and sticking it to the skin. As the hair grew out, it stuck to the hair pretty well also. And as the tapes got gooier, we realized, wow, this tape sticks pretty good to hair as well as skin. Maybe if we cut a little strip off of this skin hair system, let's see how good it sticks to the hair. And it was just a little short 6-8 inch hair. So then we started adding more hair. And I found that at one point I was putting a tape in like almost all the way around a client's head and thinking, you know what? If I did them in shorter sections, it was seeming to stay in better if I did little pieces here and here. And before you know it, I took this whole thing, folded it in half, put my scissors in there and cut it. Fold it in half again, cut it. Fold it in half again and cut it. And I got it down to where it was about 1.5 inches long. And so shortly after that, tape and extensions start coming out. And I was thinking, that's about how long of a piece I use, 1.5 to 2 inches. And so when SoCap, before it was She Hair, came out with tape ins, I remember the company's stance was, these are not for full heads. This is for a little color pop here and there, or a fill in. And I was like, no, this is for full heads. I've been doing it with another company's hair. Sure, yours is going to stay in better now because we're going to heat seal it in with, and we called it extensives. And I, in New York, put them on one of my stylists. Her name was Jennifer. For the first time, full head. Well, I mean, we were doing it in the salon for a while, but for the first time at a show in front of a crowd, did a full head of extensions with tape ins. Ooh, people were just blown away. Like, how can you do that? I thought, well, if you can put one in, why can't you put 15
20 in? Yeah, right.
20 in, right? And so she loved it, and she wore it for a while. And I was already doing tape ins, but a little more of a temporary tape, more like what most people use today as tape. It would stay in 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 weeks. But the ones with that was SoCap back then, that is She Hair, now extensives, you would heat it up with a little small flat iron. It had a little keratin in there. It would heat seal in and stay in even longer, which was fun. But most people didn't want to put that extra work in, so it didn't really took off for a little while, but didn't really stay around like we thought it would, because tape was so easy the old way or the new way. I think people just gravitated towards the easy way. So what are we missing? I mean, we kind of mentioned extensions, wigs.
The painful sewing.
Yes.
And braiding.
That was the first thing I learned. So yeah, we can go into technique a little bit because we did kind of mention all the different kinds of wefts, but you're right. The progression
I guess with like, is that the category you would say track hair? You wouldn't just say weft?
So for a little knowledge, let's clue some hairdressers into the right words and some of the old words, and maybe with a customer, if they ever hear this, they'll know. There was the thing that you would do along the head originally would have been like I guess the most well-known term is if you did a little bitty tiny braid, it would be called maybe a cornrow braid or a small braid, or a track would be the word. So you would put, and this is where people would get confused, and they would say, do you have tracks? Do you have, so the words would get all mixed up. And the part on the head, Hair Club for Men and Apollo were doing that same little thing along the head, a track, a braid, a cable. They called it a cable.
I remember that.
So they would put a hairpiece on the head and sew the hairpiece to the cable that was on the head for men and for women. And then since we were putting things on, I think that extensions were first, though. I think people were doing this track or thing along the head. The reason you called it a cable is you had this box sitting on the wall with these fishing string, nylon string coming from it to the head, and you would twist the strings with the hair and make something sort of like a cornrow braid along the scalp. And it was a a support mechanism for putting the weft and sewing it to it. So the cable, the track, the braid, the cornrow braid, those were all serving the same purpose. And they were tight. Ooh, they were painful. You could see the skin. I mean, it was like when you put it on, you'd see the skin pull together. And then you lay the weft on and start to sew and make more knots and snug it up even more. And it would be like, some people were used to it and they were good. But
that was original Botox.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people felt a good bit of pain from it at least the first day or two or three. And they're like, oh, it's going to grow out in a few days, or it's going to freaking fall out. It's going to pull the hair right out of your head. And then you'll feel no more pain after the scabs go away.
Do we, does the animal hair have a place in it? Because I remember going to tack shops, which is where you buy horse supplies. And I remember I would go with a couple of stylist friends of mine. They would literally buy horsetails, and I mean, it would come in this long, big thing, and we would spend hours cutting it up, combing it out, putting conditioning treatments into it and cholesterols and stuff to soften it up because the cuticle was so, thicker and stronger and heavier. And man, those were days. And then, and like the feathers and stuff from the ducks.
Well, let's stay on the horsehair for a minute. So yeah, so the hair itself, horsetail hair, it's so freaking big. It's large hairs.
Yeah.
And that's what made it look so like synthetic or fake, but it actually was you can't call it human hair, but what is it? That's a good thing to get into.
Animal hair? I don't know
animal
how else
hair,
to
right?
say it.
Because there's human hair, synthetic hair, then there's animal hair, because people are using yak hair for certain things.
Yeah, yak
also
has always been
it
very
doesn't come
popular.
as long. But you know what was interesting about horsehair is that being in the extension world, I would get asked at least once or twice a year, do you have real 30, 40-inch hair for my horse's tail? Because people that did shows and paraded their horse or whatever they do on I don't really know the horse world.
I've done it.
Competitions. You put extensions on a horsetail?
On a horsetail, yeah.
What kind of hair do you use?
The tack shop we literally went to a tack shop and literally bought horsetail.
So I knew that was
so the competition works like this.
I never did buy it. Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, so when the horse is being judged, or the rider and the horse, it's a team, when they're being judged in the competition, the feet of the horse is their hooves. And then their ankle, like if you can picture a horse right now, the hoof and the ankle of the horse, there's not a lot of room in between. And so the judgment comes down to is how full of a tail can there be between the ankle and the hoof? And it just goes to the grooming and the maintenance of the horse.
So the horse's tail has to basically come almost to the ground?
Almost. And one of the issues, what happens is in nature, the purpose of the tail, why horses flip their tail all the time like that,
flies off of
is to
them,
get the flies off, the poop off their butt, And so what ends up happening is, due to friction and due to that tension of flipping it back and forth all the time, it starts to split, it starts to shed, it starts to break, stuff like that. One of the other things what happens is when horses are moving in packs, the babies will chew at their parents' tails as they're following them to kind of, like, it's like holding hands, I guess. I don't know exactly what the thing is called.
So the tail gets worn out and they're taking the horses that don't show themselves, cutting their tails off and using it to put on the show horses to give them a thicker.
It's really wild. It's really wild.
Everybody wants more hair, even
animals, even a horse wants.
Even the animals, right? So yeah. So some people would use horsetail hair on humans also, as a source of some sort of fiber. Yeah, that's interesting. God, I bet there's techniques that we aren't even naming. I'd love to hear about them in the comments also. Like, name a technique we didn't name a fiber that we didn't name, because we did say string and yarn also.
Have you ever I didn't get to do it myself, the install, but I got to assist a girl, a female stylist, doing yarn install as a full hair extensions.
No, just recently we had some girls come here that a girl come here that was into dirt bike riding, and orange was her color, and she
Mm.
wanted orange yarn braided into her hair. And it made her braid bigger and thicker, and it added some color. And so one of our stylists had never done it before, but she does braiding, so she practiced on a mannequin a few times. The girl looked at it, liked it, and got it done. And I thought it was cool because it is a quick, easy way to add color to a person's hair that's not going to fade like human hair, and you don't have to go through the chemical processing of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Full head of yarn extensions, huh?
Fun. They use 7 different colors,
Oh,
and they
I was
brought
getting ready
them
to
all
ask what
together.
color.
No, it was because it was interesting because I was like, they had like two different browns, 2 different blacks, 2 different. I'm like, what? Why not just use the one? Not thinking you're creating color. And like when I'm talking about hair color or hair extensions, I'm always saying, oh, you should do it. Totally. When it comes to wefts, yeah, use 2 different wefts, put them together, it'll blend better. Or strands, or the beads, whatever one you're using. I'm always
Right.
saying that. But when it came to that, I was like, why? And they're like, oh yeah, you use them all together,
Was
it
the
blends.
overall look mostly a brown color, or
Yeah.
did they add? Oh yeah.
There was a couple of yellows or blondes, I guess, if you want to call it. There was a couple of lighter colors in there for highlighting effects,
Wow.
but overall, it was just to keep it brunette with a couple of flashes of color in there, and it
That's
looked
interesting.
amazing. It looked absolutely amazing. And then the girl pulled it up into a top knot, and I was like, man, that is sexy, man. That looks cool. That looks
Yeah.
really freaking cool. And then they would use the hair. Oh, that's another thing we didn't talk about too. They would use hair extensions, like when girls used to pull their hair in a ponytail. Instead of using they would use a scrunchie or a rubber band, but they would use a hair extension to wrap it up, to cover it up, the band.
So, so you said they would use. Now that you're saying that, it reminds me. My mom was telling me they used to just use hair, cut hair off the floor. Well, hopefully they would just cut it and save it. But they used
I
to
understand what
take
you're saying. Yeah.
raw hair and put it in like hair nets or some sort of netting, and they use that ball of hair because it would be the color of hair to put it up here in the hair somewhere, and then do your updo over that. And then of course after time they started realizing, well, you don't even see it underneath there, so we can use foam, all kind of different styrofoam things to hold a shape and then style the client's hair around it. But originally it was just regular hair. Probably shouldn't name the guy, but there's a famous singer that one of my stylists used to sing with, and he's mostly bald on top, but he styles his hair kind of up and wild. And she said, yeah, he used to take any of the hair that fell out of any of the girls' hair, our brushes. He would clean the hair out of the brushes and just pile it all up on top of his head
Oh, that's
and
cool.
start hairspray and pushing his hair around it just to make his. I thought, well, that's creative. I mean, I think a
It's
lot.
very creative. I mean, if you're going avant-garde like that, we know Nicholas French. He used to use
Yeah.
chicken wire and meshes and all kind of like screen material, and spray glue it on to create the amazing avant-garde looks that he would create. That would, I mean, he's been published
So
in.
my favorite thing, I know we're going off a little tangent. We're still talking about add-on hair, but since you touched on the avant-garde side, and Nicholas French has won quite a few awards in that category
Mm-hmm.
in many places on this earth. The thing I found fascinating, it kind of opened up my mind, was that that opens you to so much creativity when you don't have the limitations of she has to redo this tomorrow, or she, because a lot of times stage work, I'm like, they are not going to a regular job looking like that, or home to a regular husband looking like that. That is just for stage. And then when somebody goes, yeah, that's right, it's like, oh, okay. Because at one point I'm like, that's not real. I mean, why are we doing this? Well, it does expand your creativity to do something just over the top, dreaming for a minute, and you will get some new ideas for uh, just actual real world stuff. And so one of the things Nicholas did one time that I thought was kind of cool was he didn't know how to do extensions. He didn't know how to do hair extensions, but he saw our hair extensions. He needed that hair that I had on this model that he had, but he was creating her hairdo mostly off of her head because he was going to add it to her head and then add her hair to it. And so to add colors to this thing that was going to go on. He just grabs out of one of his suitcases his hot glue gun and starts squirting little dots on there and putting my extensions. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way to use my extensions. I'm not going to hot glue it in a person's head because it's not going to stay for long, but he didn't need it to stay for long.
Yeah, right.
So I just liked him just doing stuff that I would never think of just for the fun of it. A girl in our office one time, Tara, she used to, and this was really cool looking. She had a mannequin and she would test the heat of the she hair machines because sometimes they would get too hot or not hot enough or not work at all. So just to quality control before they go out, I wish I had this mannequin. She had this mannequin head. She started putting extensions in. She'd put 3 or 4 or 5 bonds on with every machine that came through. Well, Eddie, she started adding them extensions to extensions to extensions to extensions. And it just got,
Oh.
you can only imagine, multicolored, longer and thicker and thicker and thicker. And it was not a perfectly neat looking head of hair because you could see bonds all over the place, but it was a bit of an organized sort of chaos, organized chaos, if there is such a thing. But it just kept getting longer and longer than any length we actually had because you were adding extensions further away from the head than you really should. And so it was just like, to me, it was beautiful. Isn't that art? Some people probably hated it,
Right.
but I loved it.
That's really
I
wild.
always want to recreate that, but I also think that's a lot of wasted hair.
So it's man, the amount of preparation that goes into that though is insane. It truly is an art form in of itself. And then, did we go into details about wigs, like traditional wigs that slip on?
Not quite as much. We could do a little bit of that, and then we'll probably have to end it because I've got another meeting. But I came into my office one time, and I have to say, we would be remiss if we didn't mention cultural differences. There's a couple of places in our world that is still not as integrated as I'd like to see. And I would say, in my short life on this planet, church and salons seem to be still very segregated. Like you go to a church, it's predominantly white church, predominantly
Oh,
black
okay,
church,
okay.
predominantly like we had 2 churches in the same building as my salon, and one was, I thought they were both Spanish. I think they both spoke Spanish, but one was more of a Spanish church, and one was more of a, I don't even know, the southern hemisphere of our area between Brazil, Venezuela, and I don't know I couldn't read the language on the door, but it's like that culture has their church. And so in the salon world, I find that it's a lot of fun when you go into the different cultural salons. And in my area, it's more like white salons, black salons. You do have in different parts of the country, like all one particular culture that you're not going to have somewhere else. And to me, that's a whole different world. So in the hair replacement world, I hired a black girl one time to help us out in the hair replacement upstairs. And I walk in the lab and she's making a wig. Now, I'm not saying white stylists don't make wigs, but I had never seen it. And now that I've hired multiple black girls work in our salon and black guys, the black girls make wigs much more than the white stylists do. And so I found it extremely fascinating. She takes a stocking cap, she puts it over her head. I said, hey, this is just a bunch of hair I don't know what to do with. I've just had for years. And she said, can I have it? I said, sure. That girl next morning's making a wig for herself. And I'm thinking, wow, this is impressive. She is sewing wefts to a stocking cap that she is going to fit on her own head. And then she starts cutting out the part of the stocking cap that would go around her face. It was a darker brown stocking cap. She got a stocking cap to match her skin color better. And I'm thinking, I could do this for any color person, if I just get a stocking cap to match their skin color. So when you talked about wig creations, that's a very creative, customized field in itself. And we lately have got into selling more and more wigs for people that want just a quick solution that they don't have to keep doing service on. And I am mostly working with John Renault right now because I don't really know any other wig companies intimately, whereas I've taught some hair replacement classes for them as they're getting into that. And as they start to explain to me the wigs, it's mind-blowing. I mean, you got full cap they call it traditional. I would say it's the older fashioned, more original, where it's a weird looking mesh up here that doesn't look so natural. So you don't show the front hairline and then mostly wafts everywhere else. And the base will have short, kind of frizzy, curly hairs to hide the base because you don't want to see the base because the old bases didn't look so good. Then you've got silicone, you've got skin base, mono base, welded mono. You've got skin base just in the front area so that you can pull your hair back, you can part it, it looks real. But then they've got full skin
Does the
elastic
lace
base,
fall into that category too?
lace, lace front with, well, you can have a lace front, a whole lace top. You can have lace front. You can have a whole lace wig. But
I mean, it's insane.
it's the combinations of what you want to do can be customized. But the cool thing about the whole world of putting hair on the top of a person's head, from hair replacement to wigs, is that most of the ideas, never all, but most of the ideas have already been done by so many people and mass produced so many times in custom orders that the manufacturers will say, that's a good idea, it's being ordered a lot, let's make it a stock system and just have it in all the colors of the coloring or most of them. So the benefit now is you can get most top of the head hair or extension hair in most of the colors of the coloring and just get it overnighted from any manufacturer in the country and be ready to put hair on somebody tomorrow. Now, do you know how to do the technique that you need to do? Maybe not. Maybe that's where education comes into play. And I say get trained properly in all these things that you do.
That's a whole nother rant in itself. Is getting educated properly on all the different techniques out there, man. You know what? I'm gonna start clacking away over here, typing that in. All right, well then let's leave it at that. I think that's a lot of coverage. We that is a lot of information.
Head coverage, you meant?
And but Bernard will be here all week, people, with that one.
All day.
All day. Yeah. What did we miss? You're right. Let us know in the comments, what did we miss? And then we'll go from there. That's a great topic.
I'll feel younger if some people will mention some things I don't know about. I'll feel like, oh, good, I'm not old and know everything yet.
Okay, Pop. Are you still going by Pop?
Poppy.
Poppy? Oh, no,
don't tell people I'm a grandpa, dude. I don't want the world to know I'm that old. Shut up. Can you edit